All right, guys. Actually, not. Here we go. All right, guys, we're back with our second segment. If you all are looking at this on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook right now, we did like 35 minutes on my podcast. You can check that out on iHeartRadio and Podbean. You all know Benj, Benjamin Spann, my older brother, middle brother. We had a really good conversation about the family dynamic, about what's happening in culture due to the instability of the family and how they're being targeted. And Benj had a lot of good things to say, and we did an introduction for him as well. So I'm not going to rehash that, but we have something we're going to get into, and I think this is going to be the fun. Like, the first part of the interview was more the serious. We're kind of like, trying to surgically talk about what's happening in culture with the family. This is going to be more fun, a little more. The first part was engaging too, but when you're talking about aliens and you're talking about like time travel, possibly, like, dude, this is going to be one of those attention grabbers. I'm going to have a lot of fun kind of putting this out and seeing what title I should use for this. So, Benj is someone who is, and if you listen to the first part of this interview, he says he's not an expert in science. And I get science is there's so many different areas of science, but he's someone who's just very well versed in the understanding the concepts of science and how science is. You would say this, and I'll ask you in a second. It's a lot of times people present science as factual, but there's always things that evolve. People are always finding things out. It's a theory, it's conjecture, and there's things that can be proved, but also, can you just define really quickly and like, what is your definition of science in general? Like, how would you describe in 60 seconds what science is?
Should have given me a heads up on that one. So to me, it's a process of attempting to better understand the material world. And I guess you're kind of getting into with some modern science like quantum physics, quantum mechanics. Still science, but it's starting to like blur the lines of the material world a little bit, which I think is actually really, really cool that's the case. But no, to me, science is all about making a hypothesis, right? Looking at the world and having a claim about material reality in some way, and then utilizing observational data, or hopefully, if you can, experimental data to try and disprove that hypothesis, right? You're looking for ways to consider it not to be true. And if you do that enough and you continue to observe and you continue to experiment, you continue to look at data, and you can't falsify a hypothesis, well then at some point you say, that really seems to be true based on what we see.
Gotcha.
And so it's just I think it's more a way of looking at the world and a way of thinking scientifically, which is, hey, it's based on data. You make you decide to believe something or state it to be true based on the fact that it seems like that's the most plausible explanation for whatever it is that's going on. But you're never 100% sure, like, this is right. We've proved this beyond any doubt. It's 100% true. That's not really the way it works.
So I'm glad he said that, and I'm not going to go this way. I could, and maybe at some point I will. I'm glad Benj brought this up because in the last presidential debate, the climate change hysteria. I love how every question the mainstream news presented about this is 100% factual. It's infallible. Listen to what he just said right there. The next time you hear that sort of question, that's like, this is just factual, unmistakable causation correlation with. I'm not going to digress here, but that bothers me a lot. Really annoys me. Anyway, all right, so I'm glad he qualified that, so we got a good definition of science. All right, so we're going to get into like the nitty gritty, the meat of this conversation right now. So UFOs and UAPs, okay? So UAPs, again, unidentified aerial phenomenons, right? UFOs, unidentified flying objects. We used to play this game called Area 51 at Lexington Green Movie Theater in Lexington. And that was like the funnest arcade game.
Yeah, it was.
And I do believe in Roswell, New Mexico. Roswell. Area 51.
You know that.
But you did nothing. Independent. Julian?
I don't remember what the guy's name is.
Independence Day. So if you don't know Independence Day, watch it. 1996, one of the best movies that came out in that decade. But Area 51, Roswell, New Mexico. Apparently there's alien. I don't know. Maybe there are. But I'm digressing a little bit. But I do want to kind of. This is a serious topic, but it's humorous as well. But it's very serious. So let me just ask you really quick, Benj. So this has become at one point. This was kind of a fringe, marginalized topic. Like people who only talked about this were.
I made fun of everybody who talked about.
Let's just say they were in a certain quadrant of this country, and they had a certain disposition that was very similar. Okay, that stigma has been busted up and shattered really the last several years in a major way. We're seeing people, intelligence in the intelligence community. We saw, and I'll mention this anecdote really quick, then I'll ask him this question, but we saw someone recently testify before Congress.
Yeah.
I believe he was a colonel, somewhere a high-ranking official in, I believe it was the Air Force. Mm-hmm. Guys, under subpoena, understand this, lying under subpoena is a federal offense, okay? You could be in prison for that, all right? So this guy, you can YouTube this, you can look this up, he testified under subpoena that intelligence, I think it was the Air Force, don't quote me, I think it was the Air Force, they have remains of non-human biologic remains. Translate. What do you say?
To me, there's nothing to translate.
Exactly. Non-human so basically...
Well, the key is that what he was saying was the pilot of the aircraft was recovered, and the pilot was a non-human biologic.
Yeah.
So to me, that, like, it could be, non-human biologic was found somewhere. Okay, well, what is that? Like, it could be anything.
So the key is that
they're saying
you brought up a very key aspect.
So there's some sort of, what he was saying, some sort of organism that wasn't human was flying an aircraft. And so to me, it's like, well, I know pretty sure that no non-human biologic that's on Earth is going to be able to fly a spaceship around.
Okay.
Or fly anything around, right? So it's like,
and let me just say this about Benj too. Benj is someone who is much more reticent to believe, and I don't like, because conspiracy theories has a poor stigma, and the CIA actually created the term conspiracy theory when JFK was assassinated. So it very much is intended to stigmatize people who have beliefs that are different than the perceived status quo. So I just want to let you know, like, when he's openly talking about this, he's not someone, he's very much antithetical to someone who gives themselves to things that are on the fringes. Just let's make sure we clarify that. So let me ask you, what are some things you have maybe evolved or become more open to in this, this conversation about UAPs, UFOs?
To me, the only major change that I would say I've had personally is I just don't ridicule and make fun of the people who believe it anymore. You know what I mean? Like that was always how it was for me. It's like, okay, either these aliens are really lucky or they're like super smart that the only people they decide to abduct are like that dude that was the pilot at Independence Day. Every time you hear somebody talking about their experience with the aliens, it's like, my gosh, you seriously went to the corner of nowhere.
There was a reason they used that guy, that's like Randy Quaid, his character, Uncle Eddie from...
That were always coming up with these claims. So it's so easy to... And then also, come on, man, like, there's aliens flying around and the government's keeping it hidden and we just don't know about it. It's like, you've got to be an idiot to believe that,
So what's your take on the...
I can't say that I believe that guy, right, that was speaking before Congress. But I also am not going to immediately, that's a little bit different, right? You got a major colonel, a professional. He certainly seemed believable when he was talking. He didn't seem like a nutcase. So I, to be honest, for me personally, I have no idea what to make of that. Just like all these other videos that you see that have now been confirmed, like, hey, no, we've seen these UAPs. We have video evidence of some of these things. We have no idea what they are. They seem to do things and maneuver in ways that completely violates the laws of physics and any known propulsion methods that we have. Yeah. So it's like, well, I don't have any idea what to make of that.
Well, it's interesting because the conversation, as you said, has trended away from those on the fringes, people who were like, okay, I can't. It was funny. I heard President Trump, he was interviewed, he's like, people are talking. This is very clean, very beautiful people. So President Trump was immediately in the interview.
He's
trying to
capturing that in his
destigmatize.
way.
He understood that, like, look, there's a certain perception of these people.
Oh.
And by the way, if you look at President Trump has not taken a firm position on that, but I did think it was funny that like he was presenting it and trying to tell people, look, people who are talking about this now, mainstream people, they're actual like credible people. You can listen to and have a conversation to.
Yeah.
But and to your point, you know, I'm kind of like I'm pretty, I guess, pliable in this situation right now. I don't have a strong opinion. I personally, if I'm going to give you my opinion about what's going on, I totally believe there are what they call UAPs. Now, do I think they're Martians from Mars who look like ET or in every, first of all, in our older brother Travis has talked about this, which is so true. Like, I get so annoyed. Like, they need to create different sounds for aliens in movies. They all have the exact same sounds. It was like they take the sound from Aliens from like Sigourney Weaver from the 80s. And Signs had it. It's like they all have the exact same sound. It's like, dude, they can sound differently. Anyway, I'm digressing, but I think there's something out there. There is something out there. What it is, I don't know. You know, I know Tucker made a great point about like all throughout human history, there have been talk about spiritual beings. Like it's become more taboo, and I think there's been, in my opinion, there's been an all-out effort to create this perception that talking about things that are spiritual is taboo. The spirit realm is for wackos, whack jobs. And in my personal belief, and this is a very Judeo-Christian belief, it's all throughout the Bible, it's in the Bible, the natural realm was created from the spirit realm. And so to me, like if you don't, and I've said this before, like on podcasts, if you don't understand that we're like in a battle with things that are unseen, you're missing a fundamental aspect of the greatest enemy you have in your life, which is the devil. And so again, like I can't say unequivocally, I think these unidentified aerial phenomenons are, you know, spiritual beings. But I certainly think there is, if you're closed off to that and you're completely saying, no, it's not possible, first of all, I'd say like, well, how can you be so sure that's not possible? Because we know even in the Bible, like it says in the book of Hebrews, that, you know, be careful who you entertain because you may be entertaining an angel. And we see all throughout scripture in the Bible where spirit beings represent themselves as actual humans. You see that in different cultures too, like in the Greek culture, you see all the time, you know, like gods manifesting themselves as humans and cohabitating with females. I mean, like, so I guess I'm presenting this as, I don't have like a dogmatic view on this, but if anything, I think, and you're saying with science, don't be so rigid and listen to what, you know, the press, I've told you, don't listen to anything the mainstream news has to say. That's my opinion. But be open to the idea that like, this could be something like, there could be something there with this. Not that you need to spend a lot of your time on it, but like, I think it's just fair to be like, okay, I'm not gonna be rigid and say these people are nut jobs and they're completely lying because there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah, no,
you know?
So to me, I think, again, I have no idea what they are. And the idea, like I heard Tucker talking about that, where he talking about them being spiritual beings. That to me seems unlikely or like a poor explanation. I just can't. So from my standpoint, the spiritual world is by definition not the physical world, right? The spiritual realm has a reality completely outside of material reality, right? It's outside of space and time. But clearly, I think most people over all of history have believed, and it certainly seems reasonable to me as well to believe, that spiritual forces can manifest in the physical world, in physical reality, in some way or another. So you talk about entertaining angels and those examples. It's hard for me to understand why a spiritual being that could or could not manifest in the physical world in some way, whatever that even means, would choose to just like manifest as an object flying over the ocean. The camera would see it and then it dives into the water and continues on. It's like, why. If it's a spiritual being or spiritual force or something having to do with that realm of things, it's like, that just doesn't make any sense to me, you know? So like, I can't understand it. But after I say that, the whole thing to me is like, I think at this point, any fair-minded person, the best you could do when you look at all this is be like, I have no idea what's going on. No, this makes no sense. I can't make a firm claim about what's going on in one way or the other, because it's almost gotten to a point with the evidence on the one side of things people have seen, things people have talked about, the places that they're giving that testimony in front of Congress from a colonel or whatever. You can't just write it off as a bunch of whack jobs lying or being crazy. But also, like, if anyone who says, well, this is what it is, be like, man, how in the world could you like make a decision on that? It's all so absurd, you know, right now. And that's honestly what's kept me so interested in all things scientific, because you know, when you're young, you have this perception, at least I did, like, oh man, we're kind of done from a science perspective. You know, we have everything. We've invented everything. We understand everything. We know how the entire world works. We have the periodic table. We know every element. We know how they combine into molecules. We understand chemistry and how those molecules interact. And that's what gives rise to the world, you know? And, you know, now, obviously it's not like even when I was younger, we had an understanding of quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and that whole wealth of knowledge has been expanding. But where science is now is like, oh, that's not fundamental reality at all. Like the quantum realm is what gives rise to all of our material reality at the atomic level, right? All these atomic particles actually have constituents that are, you know, it's crazy stuff, right? It's all these different quarks, and obviously electrons are also they're pretty much still just electrons in the quantum realm of things. But anyhow, like actual fundamental reality, what our entire material world is built on, is not stuff like all of our world is stuff. You know, it's these quantum, you can call them particles, but it's not even like, there's not even consensus on how to conceptualize what the quantum realm is, because, well, they're kind of like particles, but really they're not particles, because it's really just this big wave function of probabilities that what we would call a particle could show up in any number of places along this giant wave function. And somehow the interaction of all that stuff at the quantum level is what gives rise to material reality, but it's not even fundamentally real. You know what I mean? Like that to me, I think I would say that domain of science made the spiritual world even more real to me.
Yeah, that's good.
Right? Because it was a way where, from a scientific perspective, I had just been slapped in the face with a truth that all this stuff that you see around you that you think is just real, it's base reality, right? It's like, it's a fact. This solid thing is here. It's like, well, actually, if you get down to the fundamental level, you'd think at some point, we get down to this fundamental piece of solid stuff in the wood, right? Made up of atoms. That's fundamental, real, and then you can understand reality on top of that. Well, actually, when you get down to the very bottom, like, no, there's no smallest little bit of material stuff. Everything is coming out of this quantum field, and at that level of reality, even our physical laws don't apply, right? Classical Newtonian physics doesn't apply there, which is just crazy. So that was a big tangent to go on, but to me, when we're talking about stuff like this, it doesn't mean that I think I know what's going on with the unidentified aerial phenomenon. It just, it gives us, it should give us all a big dose of humility in terms of thinking we understand what's going on out here.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That was a good explanation. Just a few things really quick. One kind of funny thing. So most of you guys, if you're listening, that was he took me on some, I felt like I went back to like high school, geology, chemistry, all in one, and just open up the textbook and I'm trying to follow. Because typically when I think of the word quantum, my mind immediately goes to like the Ant-Man movies in Marvel when they're talking about the quantum realm, right? But no, that was good. I think principally I hear what you're saying. I think that's really good for people to understand. And I think that can be such a compelling invitation for all of us to be like, look, your reality, your perception of reality, the physical, the concrete, it comes from a realm you can't see. And that is more real than what your actual eyes are showing you. And I think that, as you said, can open you up to the most important reality. And this is the fact that you have an omnipotent being who created everything in the cosmos and somehow like knows you. I think that is the most profound like mystery that I can't wrap my mind around. But two more things. I just want to mention two more things about the aliens, and then we'll we'll delve into AI, which I think will be very interesting. But you were talking about the guy like being testifying before Congress, this colonel, and I'm thinking to myself, well, like, dude, and this is just again, this is another idea to maybe support his claim, but I'm thinking, okay, you can be federally indicted for lying before Congress if there wasn't some non-human biologic remain. That is measurable. You can say, like, if you're a whistleblower and you make this claim and you're in the Air Force and you actually have that, you could say, well, actually, no, we don't have this. He's lying.
Well, the only thing about that, so I had that same thought too, but then immediately on the flip side of that, I think, okay, if they were going to charge him with something, right? Like, you lied, you perjured yourself before Congress because there wasn't non-human biologic pilot in that craft, right? Well, you actually have to prove that he's lying. So then there has to be discovery, and his attorneys have to have the ability to review the evidence. So the government would then have to, whatever was found, it'd have to be open access for everyone to see. And so if this dude was smart, again, I have no idea, right? But let's say they found something, he knows the government wants to keep it under wraps, they're not gonna show what it is or what it was, but maybe he just added on that little extra about, yeah, an ET was flying it, And so they're stuck, right? If they wanna try and prove that no, it wasn't, they would have to give all of the information about what was there, and there wasn't non-human. So I don't know, right? I have no clue. But it's also still not enough for me to say, okay, I believe that an alien was flying this thing, I'm not saying that I don't believe it either. It's just, I'm at a point where I'm like, yeah, I can't.
No, I guess. I mean, but at the very least, that there was likely some sort of phenomenon or some sort of covert activity that was their covert thing that was found by our government that they want to conceal, which is
I think it'd be hard to deny that.
Yeah. So at the very least, we can agree on that. And we could keep going on this conversation. There's one more thing I was going to mention, but let's go ahead and delve into the AI. We spent enough time, which I think, but I'm interested in this. I mean, like, I don't have hour-long conversations about this stuff, but when I do think about it and engage in this conversation, I do think there is something to be said, like, and I'll say this very unequivocally because I believe this, that much of what we hear from supposed trustworthy sources are not trustworthy sources. And we have to understand, like, and that gives it a whole different conversation of who is trustworthy, and I get that's tough to find right now because there's a lot of different avenues to listen to. But what I would just, again, beckon anyone, like, be really careful who you're engaging with and who you're listening to, because much of what's coming from the news to you guys, to us, it goes through a filter, and it's not meant to actually inform us of what factually is going on. And that's a totally different conversation to be had, but that's more of why I'm kind of fascinated by things like this, because I'm like, there seems to me an all-out effort to not be curious. I mean, as journalists, I think one of the things you want to be is at the very baseline foundational levels to be curious. Like, be curious. Like, anyway, that's, I'll just stop there. All right, so AI, artificial intelligence. This thing is like just proliferated substantially in the last, 5 years? I was talking to someone yesterday. I'm like, I was talking to Morgan, my wife. I was thinking about I was texting you, as a matter of fact. I was like, Siri, text Benj, such and such. I'm thinking to myself, like, even 15 years ago, if someone were to tell me you can talk in your car and send a message to someone via text message, I'd like, what? I would have thought that was really bizarre. Like, but that can actually happen. Notwithstanding 30 years ago, like what people would have thought, like that is. So I guess what I'm saying is this kind of goes to you're talking about quantum, the different elements of science and discovering, and like how much stuff we have right now. What is common, what's normal? That we have this like camera that's a phone filming us. No one had any idea that that could even exist 50 years ago. So I guess with AI, let me first ask you, where do you see this going? Like where is this heading to? And one of our quotes from Jurassic Park, which I love, comes from a guy named Ian Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum, who also played in Independence Day. He said something, I'm gonna let Ben say because he says it so poignantly. So they're talking about like creating dinosaurs, because John Hammond in the movie, creates dinosaurs, like living, breathing, actual dinosaurs. And Malcolm, he is a chaos, what kind of scientist is he? He's a scientist who specializes in the chaos theory.
Yeah.
It's
like a theoretical.
Yeah.
I would compare it like a theoretical physicist or something.
Maybe he was, yeah. So, but he's big in the chaos theory in the movie, and so basically he's giving his opinion about what it means to recreate an extinct species after thousands, millions, however long you think the Earth, however old you think the Earth is. Anyway, what does Malcolm say to John Hammond?
I'm pretty sure you're talking about the time where he says, how did he say it? You guys were so busy thinking about whether or not you could, you didn't stop and think about whether or not you should. And then you did it. And now you want to suck, and you're sucking. I'm
a paleontologist, botanist, in a chaos theory, and the only person on my side is a blood-sucking lawyer.
Thank you, Jack.
We could go all day quoting Jurassic Park.
Oh, man.
Okay, so, but now go ahead. Where is this, and if you want to kind of break that out a little bit, as far as how it relates to AI.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea even what to say there. Like, there's...
Where does it go? What's the next step in AI?
Well, I don't,
or where are we at right now with it? Like, what is the biggest thing AI is doing, and what is your opinion on just even the ethics of it, or the utility of it?
Oh man, it's so hard because the term AI, people throw that around all the time, and I'm not by any stretch anywhere close to an expert, but I do know that like, not everything that we say is AI is probably truly AI. A lot of people, when they hear AI, they think of what I would call like, what's the term they use? Generalized human intelligence or something like that, basically. Like an intelligence that is generalized, it's not built for a specific purpose to do one specific thing, but you can achieve comparable to a human general intelligence in an artificial form. That I don't think anybody would say that we've come close to achieving, right? There's just too much, and there's all kinds of tests. The Turing test, I don't know if you're familiar with that. This one guy, basically, his gold standard for an AI was you'd have to be able to take that AI, have it have a conversation with a real person, and that other person wouldn't be able to know whether or not it was an AI. I still think even that's probably like a tough specific measure, because how do you what are the limits to that, right? It's not clear exactly what that necessarily would need to look like. I don't know, man. I mean, it's hard for me. So I think there's no question that artificial intelligence as a whole is going to continue to play a bigger and bigger part of our lives. It's going to disrupt all kinds of things from an economic standpoint. I mean, it already has.
Positively or negatively, in your opinion?
Well, both, I'm sure, right? Like it's impossible to say that it would be all one or the other, right? We wouldn't be running so fast headlong into it if there weren't real, obvious ways that it could make life better for everyone.
Can I ask you a question real quick to follow up with that? So, don't you think it's kind of similar to when computers came on the scene? Like,
sure,
people obviously thought computers would take the place of human beings. Like, actually, computers have made life a lot more efficient, a lot more productive, and human beings are the ones operating the computer. So I'm kind of open to what this is.
Phones are an even better, like our smartphones are an even better example. Like imagine how much easier like that has made life, right? Like it's hard for me on a day-to-day basis to even contemplate what it would be like if I didn't have my phone with, like, it's got the answer to every single question you could possibly ask on your phone, right? In terms of the actual world, like things that can be answered definitively.
You remember when Cha-Cha was here? Ask Cha-Cha?
Yeah, ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves.
Yeah,
Daniel Levengood, you work for Cha-Cha. You know who you are, Ken.
But it's a similar thing, right? Like that was a technology that radically changed our lives. It was something of an extension of us as a person with technology.
Right.
And even though it's not implanted, it's not like the Neuralink thing that Musk is working on, which I just listened to the guy. He gave an interview, the first recipient of the Neuralink chip, which is fascinating to hear about his experience and what they're doing. That thing is crazy. They're making like
so what is that really quickly? What is that?
Well, it's essentially a chip that's implanted in his brain, and it has these long threads, I think, that go throughout different parts of the brain that pick up electrical impulse. Because your brain is like, it's just a big command center, and your neurons communicate electrically, right? It's electrical impulses that go across the neurons to make your brain work. So these threads, I guess, pick up electrical signals in the brain, and then there's a really robust AI or algorithm that's built into that, where the patient's brain is learning how to operate through the Neuralink. And the whole thing is he's doing things with his brain, right? So he's typing a message with his brain through the Neuralink on a computer that he's not
saying anything,
nothing. So the way they started it, this guy's a paraplegic. So I think that's one of the reasons he obviously was like willing to be a guinea pig on this. Because, and so what he started with doing, it's like easy tasks, right? He's trying to move a cursor on a screen through the Neuralink in his mind. And he's doing that by, in his own brain, he's trying to move his hand, right? But he's a paraplegic, so he can't actually move his hand. But they've mapped, it's constantly mapping, right? It's learning. So the algorithm, the software is learning when certain impulses happen in his brain, that corresponds to his hand trying to move this way. But what he was saying is like, it's really cool because his brain and that system are learning each other to the point where he can start to, instead of trying in his mind to move his hand, he knows that he intends to move his hand in a certain way. And even before he's actually trying to do it, he can move the cursor, So it's almost like you don't even have to have that that motor stimulus, where you're trying to move something. You can actually just be consciously thinking, I want to move this way, and it'll move.
Wow. I think when people hear the word chip, like inserted in some part of our body, there's an immediate wait a second. Like I'm not
there should be. I would think.
This is not gonna yield. But I mean, someone who's paraplegic and who's able to improve their life by being able to communicate and interact with people. Again, let me just say this very clearly. I don't have a solid position on this, on AI. I'm just I'm trying to absorb as much as I can, because it seems to every time I have a conversation about AI, it seems like something is, and you mentioned how the term AI is probably applied to things that aren't actually artificial intelligence, but I feel like every time I have a conversation with someone about this, there's something new that's happening. Some entrepreneur, someone's tapping into something different. I did find this interesting. I heard someone say this. I was having a conversation that, artificial intelligence, if you program it to just be completely objective, just be fact finders, to be able to disseminate the truth as best they know how. But we're in a big information war right now, right? There's so many people saying so many different things about what's true, fact checkers, fact finders. And I found it interesting because he basically was talking about how AI, if they're programmed, and forgive me because I'm using layman terms here as far as how to, talk about constructing artificial intelligence. But if you can somehow create a system that can pull out just even from primary, secondary resources historically, who's not going to present a Wikipedia skewed, diluted version of history, but how you can honestly how they can be really good buffers of people saying things that are inaccurate, disingenuous, because they'll be able to be objective fact finders, being able to pull from all sorts of resources and give information in a way that's not diluted.
I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I had heard that as a possibility, and to me, if that was a possibility, but when you think about it, why wouldn't they be able to input a system to be able to pull any accessible information and be able to look at the most, because I guess you'd say, from a historical perspective, the most accurate information we have, like like the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example. I think maybe that was a secondary resource from the original manuscript. But the most original content, the most original historical resource we have is the most accurate, right? It begins to be diluted through the course of time. It begins to be more unreliable through the course of interpretation. So whatever's available out there, all the different things that are available, if you can compute and somehow AI is able to pull from all those different things and then compute with the most historical accuracy of things.
What do you mean by historical accuracy?
Like,
you start interpreting like dates and things that happened?
Or interpreting dates, interpreting, people's accounts of things, people's accounts of history, because history's always, I wouldn't say like history's evolving, but with new documents we find, with new artifacts, there's, history becomes more accurate, like it's very malleable as far as or I guess evolving in a sense, because there are things people are finding, people are just making discoveries. So, and the old adage, like he who wins the battle, wins the war, writes history. Yeah. So there's some truth to that too. I'm sure in many ways we're in, and I think even right now with Wikipedia, I keep citing that, but Wikipedia has become in so much ways like a diluted resource. Not to say Wikipedia doesn't have anything valuable on there, but in many ways it's become diluted because there's a certain worldview that people who run Wikipedia embrace. So I think having AI becoming more being able to produce things in a more objective, accurate way for more people will be very effective and valuable.
Yeah, obviously that's true. I think the difficulty is I don't think it's possible to do what you were just describing. To be able to interpret the world, especially history and human history, and causation of events and what that means and where we go from here. I don't think it's possible to do that objectively. I don't even think that makes sense. I think you have to view the world, history, events, all of that through some sort of frame of reference that is, that's value driven. Other than anything else, there has to be a worldview that you're able to make sense of things through. And I think that's one of the things that maybe that can help us more than anything, is just understanding that no, there is no, this is the objectively 100% factual, based on material reality way to view this. It's we have to view the world through a frame of reference, essentially a narrative, a story that allows us to make sense of the world and what we're doing here and where we're going. All of that builds on top of a fundamental narrative, a frame of reference that we perceive the world through. So I don't know that you can do it without that.
Well, I guess, and maybe I didn't describe it as well as I'm thinking about it, but more of what I'm saying is not being able to have this infallible, objective perception and narrative of history, but more of and again, this is all a lot of this is me talking about something that I had a conversation with someone and haven't done a lot of research, haven't done a lot of introspection on, but if you can have something that can pull from the most reliable sources out there, just pull primary sources, people's accounts of history, written accounts, things that maybe have been lost, things that, but this entity, this artificial intelligence, can pull from every single bit of information that's available to us, that human beings have available to them. But they can do it, and they can pull out every, primary resource, secondary resource of events, not just and again, people's opinions, because, as with anything, when history is written, people are going to give some of their opinions to it, I'm sure, their account of certain things. But in some of this is even being able to use AI to give more credence and validity to the Bible, for example, being like the most historical book, many people have said that out there as far as like just the different things that have supported what's in Scripture. But be able to pull different resources to validate what's already out there in a way like that may be more controversial and people may have more skepticism and more of a dubious, predisposition to. Naturally, that AI could theoretically potentially give more credence and validation to, hey, this actually happened because, or it's more likely than not this happened because of all these different resources that they're able to compute and process much more effectively maybe than like a singular person could.
Well, I think that's.
Does that make sense?
True. Yeah, it's true. I think your hope that could be done purely objectively without giving this AI any sort of guiding structure to filter the world through. Right. I don't like that. Doesn't seem to be possible because even when you say no, they just pull from the facts, the data to bring a perspective or determination on what is true. Like, well, somehow you have to decide which facts to even pull. Yeah. And I think today when I see bias, and it's everywhere, we can't get away from it. A lot of it is not in the specific telling of what happened. It's you have a narrative that you think is true. This is the way I view this thing. So then you go and you pull all of the facts and information that validate that. Otherwise, like, how do you even know what facts to pull? You go, well, I'm just going to look at this completely objectively and try to pull every potential fact and piece of evidence that would allow me to form some sort of opinion on this. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't, it seems like the world's too complex. There's too much there. How do you even know where to start in order to do that? Like, you have to have some value-based structure that you understand and perceive the world through. Mm-hmm. And I think there actually has been difficulty with that in the early days with artificial intelligence, where it was like there's something missing here because we don't understand how human perception and intelligence actually works. Like, we don't just receive objective sensory input from the world and then make a determination about what's real purely like robots, right? Like scientific automatons or something. Like, that's not what we do at all. Like, we block out so much every moment because we're only perceiving what we're focused on, what we're paying attention to, what's important to us. And that all comes from this base level of a value frame or hierarchy or a framework or a narrative or some sort of structure that we perceive the world through. And I don't know how you'd even perceive the world in a way that makes sense to us as humans if you didn't have that from the start. Yeah. So I think regardless, like it really ties back into what we were talking about at the very beginning of this with like, there's a breakdown in this fundamental shared narrative or hierarchy structure. It's the same thing that I'm talking about, right? At the very bottom, we all kind of agree that this is the story that we're perceiving the world through, right? This is the structure that we're seeing things through. In AI, it seems to me like, I don't know how it would be different for an AI, right?
Yeah. I mean, you would hope that something as simple, I don't think simple is necessarily the best way to describe it, but something as, I think, concrete history can be, as far as how do we determine what history is? How do we determine what has happened previously? Well, you have, artifacts, primary sources, secondary sources. And so you have something at least measurable you can pull from to make a determination. I guess I am understanding that the fallibility of, because human beings, we all have, worldviews, predispositions of how we view things. And so we do filter that through, much of how we develop, beliefs and paradigms. I understand that. And so I again, trying to create a system in artificial intelligence that doesn't similarly have their own framework as far as how they're, digesting things and how they're processing things. I guess to me, it would seem like if you could create or have something available who can be simply able to pull from the resources available and then present it in a way that's like, I guess like this, as if you have 10 different primary resources about an event. Say like when, when the Roman Empire fell to the barbarians, right? You have 10 different primary resources about that event. And maybe 4 of those resources, there's a similar view on how it fell. And then it contradicts to the 6 other primary resources that say, well, it fell because of this reason. And there's like fundamental disagreements between the 2. The 6 agree, the 4 disagree. And so, I guess I'm kind of like trying to like peel it back to a very like elementary perspective here. But if AI could potentially look at something like that, analyze the different resources, and then present a view on how the Roman Empire fell, and to be able to do it in a way that's like they're just pulling out information and what seems to be the most consistent, logical, rational explanation, as opposed, because maybe the 4 people who all agree, their perspective, for example, may be much more logical, much more rational, much more likely because of different factors that were going on during that time period. It's just interesting to think about how the possibility of AI being able to look at those 2 different juxtaposing views and then present it in a way that's like, oh, wait a second. Like, this wasn't actually presented before because of, again, people's worldviews, people looking at it and processing it differently, people filtering it through their own, wants or desires of validating their own preconceived notions, but then being able to do it in a strictly like, and again, fact-based, in the most fact-based way and, not subjective way. Does that make sense at all? Like when they're able to pull from that and then present it like in that level?
Kind of, yeah, I think, but if you're going to get into a specific example, like, first of all, there's been tons written about, the fall of the Roman Empire and why that may or may not have happened. And if there was only a matter of 10 primary resources that you were going to review to then make a determination, well, that's something a person could do very easily.
But that was, obviously there's much more. I was just kind of breaking down.
My point is, if you've got an AI, and the whole thing that's great about AI is they can plow through information so much faster than people can. Even the AIs now that's trained to do specific things on a specific task, they can plow through information and get that done way faster than a brain could, or even a number of brains. So in that case, if you were trying to determine like, how should we best understand the fall of the Roman Empire and what caused that? Well, yeah, you should definitely look at the primary sources. There's probably not going to be a ton of those now, but at the end of the day, the Roman Empire was a civilization. It was a bunch of people that were organized into a society, and then it went away. And there's been a lot of those. There's been other civilizations, other societies, other peoples. And if you were going to understand the Roman Empire and what happened to them, wouldn't it make a lot more sense to study everything about other civilizations as well? Because then you can look at it and say, well, this happened over here, and it kind of looks like in a time frame kind of what happened over here, so that probably has something to do with it. How about looking further into the past and the other ones? How about studying since then what's happened? Of course you would want to do that. That would give you a better understanding. But even then, now you're pulling in essentially an infinite amount of information throughout human history. Where do you stop? So you immediately get into this thing again where it's such a complex issue to be looking at and understanding. And how would you train an AI or a computer to understand this without giving it some sort of frame of reference or purpose, like in order for it to even know what to do? And again, that seems to be the way our minds and intelligence work and how we perceive the world. So I just don't know how we could possibly train a computer to be an intelligence, which is something we don't even really understand, like, well, maybe consciousness, I'll say consciousness, we certainly don't understand what that means or how it happens, anything about it. But we'd be trying to train a computer to perceive the world in a way that it can make use of an artificial intelligence in a way that we don't even perceive it. Like, how could we set it up or train it to do something that we as humans don't even do and don't know how to do? We don't even understand what it would be like to do that. Which I know I'm doing a terrible job of articulating exactly what that is, but it seems to me like there's a fundamental problem in that whole way of thinking, which is like, well, we don't do that. People don't do that. I don't even know if intelligence as such can work that way.
And that's kind of and we're going to dovetail out of this, because this AI, and as Benj mentioned, it's like sometimes asking the questions about AI seem to be, it's almost like you're trying to talk about a topic that is like so unknown, but it's palpable because it's out there. We see it being used, we see it like evolving, and yet it's this like abstract idea because it seems like every single day there's something new we're hearing about it. And so trying to ask questions, and a lot of this conversation with Benj here is like more of just the idea of like, what can this be? What can this become? What even is this? And I think a lot of people just like, should I completely reject it? Should I entertain it? Is this unethical? Is this going to become something that like, and I get all those questions, and we could keep having this conversation. And I mean, I think as with anything, and I think if you get anything from our conversation, I think it's one that there's certain things to be dogmatic about, certain things to be rigid about, no doubt. And we talked about that in our first segment, which I encourage you all to watch, is there's certain right and wrong, there's certain absolutes, but there's certain things in life where you can have conversations with people. I wouldn't even say we have a necessarily disagreement with AI. I don't know if I have a stance where I could disagree with anyone on it yet, but you should be able to have conversations and not feel like you have to take a rigid, position on it because of the perception and how it's being stigmatized. I think so much of the stuff with AI, or even with like the UFOs, UAPs, if you allow yourself to like let someone else tell you how you should feel about a certain topic, well, you've exchanged like your basic fundamental, right as a human of being able to formulate your own views and expressions, and not feel like, or not be afraid you're going to be stigmatized for having those. And I think that's important. And I think something like this is an example of like, look, you can have an opinion about it, you can talk about it, and you don't have to worry if someone tells you you're being unethical or unhuman. I do think that there could be some potential dangers for sure with AI, but I think be open and be willing to have those conversations and use, discernment, so. Do you want to add anything else before we kind of delve into the next?
No. I mean, I think that's fair. Like, everybody should be concerned about it. Like, it's a concerning thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's all kinds of stuff that could happen as a result. But like, one of the things for me too is like, it really doesn't matter how concerned I am about it, because this is happening. Like, it's full steam ahead. The research that's being done and the people that are doing it. So who knows where it all leads? But I think that's why the most important thing is that we get those initial fundamental issues figured out about what is foundationally true for us as a people, because again, those things are going to be more and more important as our technology grows and we have more and more power essentially over the world. It's like, man, we better be the type of people who have the kind of moral character to make good use of that.
And that's that. And if you want to hear more about that conversation with Benj and I, we talk about that pretty in depth, or at least we could have talked about it much longer, but we spent about 30 minutes talking about that in our first segment. But we're going to wrap it up here in the next few minutes. We have our last segment, which I am excited about. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you like nouns, okay? So it could be a proper noun, it could just be a noun, person, place, thing, or idea, all right?
Okay.
And I want you to give me your first initial reaction to what I say in a sentence or less. So you can't like elaborate very long. This has got to be a short, succinct, boom, what do you think?
A sentence or phrase
That describes the name, the thing, the place, whatever I give you.
All right.
So this is going to, and Benj is someone who does a really good job of like just organically and impromptu saying something about someone or something, you know, very quickly. All right, so first one. This is going to be a doozy. I've been looking forward to this one. Joe Biden.
Oh, man. Not what he once was.
You know, if you don't know what the word euphemism is, look that up, because that's exactly what this guy did right here. If you want more of like an actual like critique, watch Ben Shapiro's latest podcast.
You said a sentence or less, so I can't go far.
I'm just saying that was very, you know, very honorable as a human being to go in that route. Okay, Vladimir Putin.
Confusing to me. He's confusing.
Communism.
Failed.
Zelensky, president of Ukraine.
Small.
Jesus of Nazareth.
King. He's the king.
Hollywood. And feel free to, if you want to, a sentence is, you know, some people's sentences are longer than others.
Yeah, less is more usually. Loathsome.
Okay. Border with Mexico.
It's a chaotic mess right now. Say that.
Chaotic mess. Okay. Wayne Newton.
Wayne Newton. It's leathery. We'll go with leathery. Wayne Newton after the border with Mexico. It's like, what
I told you, man. This is the fun part.
Oh man.
Israel.
They're just in such a tough spot, man. Like tough place. Like I think, yeah, this is more in a sense. The stakes are so high for them in everything. I can't imagine living the way that they have to live, trying to like do everything just perfect, but trying to exist in the context they are. It's got to be difficult.
That's fair. Democracy.
The power is with the people.
Nikola Tesla.
Genius. He's a genius, man.
Elon Musk.
No, I think he's a genius too. Yeah, there's something more with him. Like, I don't know. I think it's really cool that he's got the power and success that he has, and he's decided to not just be cool with it and do the easy thing that most billionaires do, which is just say, "Oh, I'm for philanthropy, give away a lot of money," and then take every single like popular view that everyone else takes. So he's a true maverick.
A few more left. America.
Shining city on a hill.
Trying to think if I have any more. The Wayne Newton one was good.
You got me with Wayne Newton.
I just immediately was thinking of Vegas Vacation. With, by the way, I don't know. I looked up Wayne Newton recently, and I just was, I don't know. It was amazing. Like, first, Wayne Newton is the guy. If you don't know Wayne Newton, he's the I don't know really what he does in Vegas. He's a singer, right? He sings and he's a showman. And
I got a hot take for you. Your conspiracy theory. I think that's what was flying that UAP that the colonel of the Air Force found. That was Wayne Newton, the non-human biologic.
My side's gonna start hurting. Oh man. Okay. Well, I think we got to end on that one, man. I don't know if I have anything more on that. That's kind of a drop in the mic. Well, appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, man.
This is my first inaugural interview on encountering the truth. And so, again, we're going to close it up here. Guys, if you have not listened to the first part, this was actually the longer part on the video. First part is on Podbean, iHeartRadio. Any closing thoughts?
No, man, it's fun.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Caleb, you want to say something? That's his son right there. And Caleb, he's going to be in 8th grade. He's about 6'2", and he can almost dunk a basketball. So, how many people can say that? Not many. All right, guys, we'll catch you soon. Hope you guys have a good start of your week.
Thanks, man.
Later. Yep.